and I am your pet's life coach. And I'm very, very excited to be here tonight to talk about my favorite subject, which is your dog's skin. We could talk about cat skin also, though they are a little bit different, and there's some things to think about differently with both of them. But it's so funny because anytime I'm late for anything, even if it's a second that I'm late, I start in my head, I start hearing that thing from Alice in Wonderland. I'm late, I'm late, I'm late for a very important date. And all it does is stress me out more. It doesn't help me. I start thinking that I'm late, even when I am. So, Lori, is everything okay? I have somebody backstage that's helping me. I can still see you on my screen, so I didn't know if you still needed, if you were still there. Sorry, guys, we're having a little bit of technical difficulty. Okay, still live. Just it kind of messes with me. But anyway, I don't know about you guys, but when I am late, the stress of being late always gets on me. So I apologize because I think we were about 3 minutes late before we got on here, but we're here now, and really excited too because tonight we're trying something new that I have been wanting to do. But for those of you who are on the Spaws page, I go live every Wednesday night, and we either talk with another expert or we talk about just things that I am inundated in all the time. And but tonight we're trying something different and hoping that it's going to be going live on a group that I belong to called Saving Pets One Pet at a Time. And it is a group that was formed by a fabulous woman named Kelly Bone. And her dog died during the Hills Science Diet recall that went on a few years back. And so she formed this group called Saving Pets One Pet at a Time, and they have reached out and saved so many animals. I am absolutely sure. And I was very, very fortunate and honored when she asked me if I would come on and be an admin. And so for the last few years, I have helped her, and she now has lots of veterinarians. And so we're hoping that everything goes well, and we're live on Saving Pets as well. But tonight, we are going to be talking about everything we can as far as your dog's skin, your cat's skin. Those are the things that we're going to be talking about, your dog's skin microbiome. And it's super important to talk about the skin's microbiome. I don't want to say it's more important than your dog's gut, because they work together. But if the skin is destroyed, that is your first line of defense. So if anything gets past the first line of defense, then everything else has to work a little bit overtime. And so that's why I'm hoping that people will start to understand the benefits of making sure that the skin is very, very protected. And I love that we now talk a lot about the gut microbiome, because that has been ignored for long enough now that it is so many animals are just, their guts are destroyed, that it's really hard to get those back in control. But the skin's microbiome is also very, very, very important. If not more, at least equally. And so we need to address that. A lot of times people, and me included, when I first started learning about the microbiome, I had to really dive deep into it and learn that every part of your dog's body has its own microbiome. Hi, Holly. So the ears, the eyes, the mouth, the gut, the heart, the skin, all has its own microbiome. And so when we talk about your dog's skin microbiome, we're talking about the nose, the ears, the skin that's in the ears, the actual skin that's protecting your dog's gut, your dog's whole immune system. And that's one of the reasons why when I talk about the skin's microbiome, that I want you to understand how very, very, very important it is. Because in your dog's skin, unlike your skin, so our skin is about 10 to 15 cells deep. That's the epidermis. So the epidermis layer, that first layer of skin, it's not confusing, but our skin is actually thicker than your dog's skin. But the first layer of the dog's skin is actually, if you look at all three layers, your dog's skin is actually thicker than our skin. But their first layer, the very, very first layer, the epidermis of their skin, is thinner than our skin by quite a bit. So a dog's skin, their first layer of skin, is about 3 to 5 skin cells deep, and ours is about 10 to 15 skin cells deep. And why is that important? That's important because I'm going to be talking to you a lot about bathing and exfoliating and all of these things that for so long we've been taught is a good thing to do. And I'm going to be talking to you tonight about why I want you to stop doing that with your dogs, because I don't want you to disrupt your dog's skin microbiome. And particularly what I want to talk about is some of the skin cells. There's a whole bunch of different types of skin cells inside your dog's skin, the first layer. But particularly, there's these skin cells called Langerhorn cells, and those are your dog's immune cells. And that is where we start the first line of defense, the first immune cells that your dog first, any type of immune system that happens is in that first layer of the skin cells. So it's really, really, really important that we protect those. And when we look at, hi, Arlene. So also, thank you guys for coming on. And so I do want you to know that please feel free to ask me questions. We can ask questions and talk about this. The number one reason that dogs go to the vet is for the skin. So I bet if you all right now just kind of sat back and asked how many times you went to the vet and what you went to the vet for, if we rule out general stuff like needing to get their vaccines, or if you buy dog food at your vet, picking up dog food, if you rule out all of those, most people will say they've gone to the vet over ear infections and skin problems. And I kind of group the ears and the skin in the same group because I think it's the same problem. So Apoquel causes yeast and even mange happen to us. Yeah. So Apoquel actually has the ability to shut down the immune system. And so imagine if your dog already didn't have the right skin cells to protect him. And then on top of that, we're giving him something like an Apoquel that will shut down the immune system. And then everything will happen. Mange is known to, I'm glad you brought up mange, Arlene, because I do want to talk about mange. I want to talk about all of the different, well, probably not all of, because there's tons of them, but I'm going to talk about a lot of skin disorders that animals get and how oftentimes these skin problems that animals get are absolutely misdiagnosed. So don't get me going on Apoquel. We could all get on it, right? So thank you for saying hi to Lori. I always want you to know, without Lori, I could not type in the stuff that you're going to need for this little talk that we're going to be doing. But so there's so many different types of skin problems that your animals can get. I recently did a video on a condition that is very common in golden retrievers, and it's called ichthyosis. People can get ichthyosis as well. It's a genetic disorder. I cannot tell you how many times I've seen dogs in my business, my grooming business, that have been told that their dogs have skin problems, that they have dry skin. And in fact, I send these dogs off and I'm like, please go get tested for ichthyosis. And we find out it's ichthyosis. I think that a lot of animals are being misdiagnosed for a lot of things. Mange is another thing that gets misdiagnosed all the time. All the time. They get misdiagnosed for mange. They're told, and most of the time when a veterinarian doesn't know what the dog has or even begin to know where to go look, it's not that they're awful, horrible people. They just weren't taught this, or maybe they're not in an area. I am very, very well versed on mange because I used to work in an area where mange was really prevalent. And believe it or not, certain parts of the country, things like that can happen. There's certain parts of the country where they might see more parvo. And I worked in an area, the vets that I worked for, it was a high parvo area and it was a high mange area. And so I got very well versed in it. And but then I moved into a different area and that area never saw mange at all. And so a lot of the veterinarians had no idea what it was because they had never seen it. And they're not taught everything in vet school. I mean, they're there for 4 years. This information that I've had has been years, 40 years going on. The ocean water shampoo and lotion. So we're going to be talking about that, the lotion that Jennifer's talking about. We are going to be talking about that as we dive into this and talk a little bit about skin cells. So, and the skin's microbiome. And for a lot of the people that follow us, I know that you're you're probably well versed in understanding about what too much antibiotics can do, or taking the wrong antibiotic to treat a bacteria. We hear this a lot from the vets that are in our group, where they talk about not running cultures and finding out exactly what they're dealing with, and then they just throw random antibiotics at you. Now, to be fair to those vets, for years, it's just kind of been a way to make the cost of veterinary care go down. And so instead of running all these tests, they would just kind of throw some antibiotics at an animal that they thought might have some kind of a bacterial infection. But as we're learning, antibiotics need to be with the right bacteria in order for it to even work. And if it doesn't work, it's bad enough that it just didn't work. But what makes it worse is that it makes it worse, because now it killed off other bacteria that might have been helping a little bit. And so it can be really, really frustrating. So as you know about that, and you're learning about, antibiotic use and the right kind of antibiotics, and making sure that you're getting the right diagnosis before we prescribe an antibiotic, keep in mind that the same thing is happening, only in a much grander scale, I would say, with medicated shampoos, with antibacterial shampoos, which is basically the same thing as an antibiotic. It's killing off all of the skin's microbiome and then creating a problem. What happens is it's very similar to antibiotics. And if you know anybody, or if you've had an animal that got into that circle, it's this vicious circle that you get into, where you start on an antibiotic, or you start on something for diarrhea, and then every time you get off, you get diarrhea. And so you keep going back on it, and you keep going back on it, and you keep going back on it. The same thing happens with using the medicated shampoos. So when I look at, I meant to bring it today. Honestly, today was a really stressful day at work, just a little bit short staffed today. I had somebody get injured the other day, and so now I'm a little bit short staffed. So I meant to bring a bucket. I have a bucket, huge bucket of medicated shampoos that are brought to me, and veterinarians want pet owners to use these medicated shampoos on a regular basis on their animals. And what they're doing is they're creating a complete disruption in the skin's microbiome. And now we have young puppies that are started off on it. And as soon as they stop it, I recently had a owner, she owns a Schnauzer. And, it just it didn't occur to her at all that her dog was in a vicious cycle. So she would bring the medicated shampoos to us, and it makes it really difficult when I know this isn't the answer, but I'm not a veterinarian, and let me put that out there. I'm not a veterinarian. I am a dog groomer who just happens to have been doing this for a really long time, and also very passionate about it. So I spend a lot of time observing and watching and looking and talking and educating myself. And I go all over the world. Actually, I have been many, many places trying to learn this, but because I'm not a veterinarian, it's really hard for pet owners to think that the vet could be doing harm, when of course they have to take an oath to not take harm, or do no harm, but they don't think they're doing harm. It's just not there yet. They're starting to get there now. I love that I'm starting to get veterinarians now that are being a little more cautious with antibiotics, and they're definitely making sure that there's a probiotic. But I think they still need to get there with the skin, and we really, really, really need to protect the skin. So let's look at some of the skin conditions that an animal can have. So thank you. Lori just posted, that's an article I wrote a while ago about medicated shampoos and the harms that they can do. So let's first talk about how often do skin cells regenerate. And then we're going to talk about some skin disorders. But skin cells regenerate in humans about every 28 days, in dogs about every 20 days. So when they're going through their cycle, each part of that cycle, every day of that cycle, you have cells that are maturing, and each one is doing their job, and it keeps going and going and going. But when we stop that cycle and we we exfoliate everything off, what we're doing is we're taking layer by layer off. And then now what's faced there is just these little immature skin cells. that can't really do their job because they've been layered off. Now with humans, it's a little different. Like we always, women particularly, not to call everybody out, but go get, these peels and these this and this that and all of this stuff going on because we want to exfoliate. We're all about exfoliating. And that's a whole different subject for somebody who works with humans, but it's a little bit different because we have a thicker skin. But because your dog's skin cells are just 3 to 5, imagine if your dog's skin, the epidermis only has 3 layers of cells and you just wiped them all clean because you're overbathing and you're using stuff that is supposed to exfoliate and kill and wipe everything off. When you do that, you leave your dog fully exposed to every allergen, everything he gets exposed to, every toxin, everything. He only has 3 to 5 layers and he needs all of them. So skin cells regenerate in your dog. I'm going to say that again. Skin cells regenerate in your dog every 20 days. Now, here's the hard part, right? Because we got them when they were a puppy. And when is that 20 days? When's the 20 days? No one knows. It's impossible unless you got that dog at the infancy. Never heard of that unless it's maybe brushing them. There's a lot of products on the market that help do exfoliating. Even apple cider vinegar can kind of pull a layer of skin cells off, just like they do with people. Sometimes there's Dead Sea salt can do it. There's all sorts of things that can do it, but I'm not a fan of it. I don't like exfoliating and using anything harsh to pull off those skin cells because I want them there because they are only 3 layers deep. So I don't want to exfoliate. And if you start to see dry, flaky skin going on, that's actually because it's regenerating too fast. So that is what happens with ichthyosis. I mentioned earlier in the beginning of this about some of the conditions that get misdiagnosed. And we are gonna talk about those. Remind me, because sometimes I just go off on a tangent. I always say that when I do these lives, I should have like a notebook over here telling me what to talk about, but I don't. I just kind of go off of the fly. So I don't want you guys to exfoliate. And as we're exfoliating or using anything harsh, then we're pulling those away. And now your dog is fully exposed to everything. But how do we figure it out? How do we figure out? Because we weren't there the day your dog was born, because that's when it started. The day your dog was born, his skin cells, he was born with his skin cells. And then 20 days later, he regenerated them. And then 20 days later, he regenerated them. And it went through its life cycle. But now none of us know when that life cycle is beginning or ending. And it would be impossible unless we went and looked under a microscope, and none of us are going to do that. We wouldn't be able to do it. So what I do is tell people, go as long as possible when bathing your dog. That's the number one. Go as long as possible. My old girl is getting dry, flaky now, not overbathed, age 16. Okay, we'll talk about that, about what else can cause some flaky skin, because of course, they could be nutrition, it can be airborne, it can be the shampoo that we used a while, not overbathed, which is good. If you know what that means. I mean, some people think that if you bathe them every 2 weeks, it's not overbathing. So I wanted to put that out there, that I think that anything more than once a month is overbathing. Unless your dog has something going on like fleas or mange or any motor oil. Believe it or not, a lot of dogs get oil on them and they have to be washed off. Funnily enough, hate that word, I don't know why I used it. Funny enough, back when I was working for the vet, there was some kind of rumor going around that if your dog had mange, that you would soak them in motor oil. And it went on for, I want to say, about a year. And it was way before Facebook and way before we had all this access to giving people information. We had dog after dog after dog, because we were in a high mange area, coming in with just saturated in motor oil. It was crazy. And we were like, why are all these dogs? The first dog, it was kind of like, oh, okay, he must have got under their car. And then it just kept going and going. And it was one after another, motor oil, motor oil, motor oil. And so it ended up being kind of an issue until finally, I don't know, I guess everybody realized that motor oil didn't actually kill mange. So mange is an interesting thing. So let's dive into that. Let's talk about some of the skin conditions that dogs can get. So they can get And all of them, I really do believe, have a lot to do with whether or not those skin cells are protecting them. But we can look at mange. Mange is an interesting little mite that lives underneath the skin, and you can't see it. It's microscopic, and it strangely does affect some breeds more than other. We see it, but it really is an immune thing. Some dogs can be born with that and have it their whole life, and you'll never ever see any signs of it. But mange, typically, when mange appears, it's typically around the eyes, the muzzle, the feet, and sometimes the tips of the ears. And then if it gets too far gone, if it's not treated or not taken care of, or the animal's immune system just continues to get affected, then you'll see it spread all over the body. But if you have an animal who's starting to lose hair around the eyes, using Murphy's oil, wow, interesting. I don't know too much about Murphy's oil, but I'm thinking isn't that the oil you use on your furniture? That's interesting. Um, 16 years old, pom pom grows like a weed, thick coat. Oh, good, awesome. I love when poms are so cute. Little boo, especially like sometimes they get their little trimming their hair. We don't want to shave them, but sometimes people trim their hair and they look so cute. They look cute no matter what. But the little rescue that I have right now is, I think, part Pomeranian. So mange, like I said, mange is something that uh, so many times gets misdiagnosed as being allergies. So they'll see the dog starts licking his paws, those kind of things. And then you go to the vet and the vet will say, oh, it's allergies. And before you know it, your dog's on Apoquel. And if your dog goes on Apoquel and he actually had mange, you're going to have the biggest problem ever, because your dog's immune system was already compromised, or otherwise the mange wouldn't have come out. And now we just shut down more, if not all, of the immune system. And now your dog is susceptible to everything. So diagnosis is important, but knowing what to look for, right? You can't just go into the vet and go check for everything. Check for everything. I want you to check for everything. So you want to know your breed. You want to know what your breed might be susceptible to. Mange, most of the time when we see mange in dogs, I gave you the characteristics of it. We see it a lot in pit bulls. We see it a lot in Rottweilers. I've seen it a lot in Chihuahuas for some reason. I know it seems weird because it seems like it would be the bigger dogs. But mange can affect any breed, absolutely any breed. And this is just my experience. Maybe in other parts of the country or other places, someone say, oh my God, no, this breed is more susceptible to it. But I have seen it most of the time in pit bulls, Rottweilers, Chihuahuas. But again, any breed can have it. But knowing your dog's history as well will help you. Knowing where exactly did this dog come from. I'll give you another example. So I had a client bring me the cutest little darn thing ever, little puppy, little black and white puppy. And he was just a baby and he was excessively itching. So these are the things I want you to know about when your dog is licking their paws or self-mutilating. Meaning, every once in a while I catch him licking his paws and it drives me crazy because I'm trying to watch Ted Lasso, which is my new favorite show, by the way, on TV, and it's driving me crazy because he's licking his little paw. Or my dog's about to rip his paw off. So those are very good things to know the difference of, because they could lead you to what the actual cause is. So I always ask people, when you tell me your dog is licking your dog's paw, rescue dogs in the South, I bet it is. Know the difference between licking a paw, because that could be any number of reasons for that. Paw licking can be from anxiety. It can be from harnesses pulling too much. There's a nerve that goes down into the foot, and sometimes that pulling when you're walking can cause it. I'll let you know, Arlene, on the treating for mange. Give me 1 second. Paw licking can be from something in there. It can be from a foxtail stuck in there between their toes. If you don't know what a foxtail is and you think that might be part of the problem, you really want to look up foxtail, and not a fox's tail, but a foxtail. It's a weed, and those can get in between the toes right here, and they can cause your dog to lick. Cuts on the paw can cause it. Growths coming through can cause paw licking. Broken toenails, long toenails. I can't tell you how many times I have had people bring me dogs and they can't see their nails because the hair is so long. And then I get them up on the table and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like walking on high heels 24 hours a day. Can you imagine? And the nail is so long that it causes the pad to come up. So then it's going to cause their pain in there. And so the dog will start licking their paws. So you want to pay close attention to that. But this particular story was a dog who came to me as a puppy, young. I want to say the dog was only 2 months old, maybe three. I don't think so. Maybe 2 months old. And she had called me on the phone and said, I just got to bring my dog in for a bath because he's just driving me crazy. He's itching nonstop. It's awful. So she brought him in. And when she was getting him out of the car, she took him out of the car. And when she put him down on the ground, this dog just sat on the ground and basically self-mutilated. That just going at it. And she had to pick him up real quick. And then the whole time she was holding him, all he wanted to do was go at his feet. And so she brought him in and I asked her to put him down again, and she put him down again. And then we had a conversation about it, and she had been to the vet, and the vet said that it was allergies and had put the dog on allergy medicine. And then said from there, I might have the story a little bit wrong. I think one way or the other. So it went from maybe it was medicated baths to allergies, or allergies to, I don't know, or both, but they have been trying everything. And so when I saw the dog, I said, oh no, this isn't allergies. That's not how allergies present. Allergies don't present to a point where a dog wants to rip his leg off. I said, this dog has some kind of mange or something. Even though he was so young, we couldn't tell because he hadn't lost the hair yet. So then I started to get a history, and this is why I want you to get the history. Where did this dog come from? Well, what we found out is that this dog had came from Mexico, and it was, I think, either bought or something right across the border. As soon as she said that, I knew this dog had mange. So I told her to go back to her vet and have them test for mange. The vet did not want to do it. He didn't think it could possibly be mange. So he gave her something else, which she did. And then, I don't know, a little while back, she came back to me again. Dog was still suffering. And I said, please go to a different vet. This dog has mange. So they did a second skin scraping, which is really important with mange. Do not, if you suspect your dog has mange, now, make sure to get more than one skin scraping and in 2 different locations, because the test result is only as good as the actual slide. So they're going to scrape the skin and then they're going to put it under a slide and they're going to look. So if they tell you it's negative, you want to make sure that you get another skin scraping in about a week. And then you want to make sure it's in 2 different locations to check for mange. If your dog does end up with mange, what we used to do was ivermectin injection. I know everybody hates that, but mange is it really will wreak havoc on your dog's immune system. And so to think not to do something about it, or to keep trying all of this other stuff and it's not work, mange is really hard to get rid of. So, and it is directly related to your dog's immune system. So you want to make sure that you get rid of it. So I like to use the ivermectin. And then there is a dip, which I'm going to be recommending a lot here for itchy paws and stuff. So you might want to write this down. Lori will probably look it up for us. But it's a lime and sulfur dip. And it's been used for anything from mange to using it for yeast infections, bacterial infections. Can be used for just about anything. It's not the most holistic thing out there, but it works, and it works really, really well. And I like to use it because if you go through the whole treatment with it, a lot of times, even if your dog you're not showing symptoms, or not showing like you did a scraping and nothing showed up, but all of the symptoms are there. I have people do it. Yes and no. There's different types of mange, so it depends on which one. I personally think either one of them can be transmitted back and forth. Just depends on your dog's immune system. So, which is why it's super important for us to make sure that their skin cells can protect them from things like this. But they can be born with it. They can get it from their mom. So you just want to be really, really aware whether your dog has it or doesn't have it, and it requires you to do those testing more than once. Don't let a veterinarian just do one little skin scraping above the eye and then look under his or her scope and say it's not mange. If your dog is self-mutilating, there is a very good chance that your dog has mange or some type of a mite, they can get all sorts of different types of mites. They can get, I think there's a duck mite. There's all sorts of little mites that your dogs can get. So you really want to make sure. And yes, 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 yes. I would do the same thing for scabies. Uh, Same symptoms, treatment as mange. Yep, absolutely. So if you get the lime and sulfur dip, you can get it on Amazon. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, like it smells horrible. So if you're gonna do it at home, or if you have a groomer that can do it for you, I wouldn't have company coming over that day, maybe 2 days. It is the most horrible smell. But I say that, and yet just the other day, because I do these dips quite a bit at the spa, for even just for paw licking. Sometimes I'll just tell people, we did a case of a Yorkie. God, it's probably been about 2 years ago. His name was Jax, and Jax self-mutilating. I mean, little tiny Yorkie self-mutilating. He did not have any outwardly symptoms of mange. Like he wasn't losing any hair around his eyes. He didn't have any muzzle losing hair. His feet weren't even mangy looking, nothing like that. But he was going at his feet to the point where mom had to keep a cone on him, and she could not take the cone off. If she took the cone off, self-mutilate. Not just a little licking. I'm talking about rip your foot off type thing. So I just said, you know what? Let's do a lime and sulfur. Let's just try it. And so we dipped his feet in the lime and sulfur. And the way that I like to do it is about every 3 days. So you could do it a couple of ways. You can do it where your dog just soaks in the lime and sulfur. This is the least best way, the least best way to do it. Where they just soak in the lime and sulfur. Like if you were just going to do their feet, you'd get like a little cat pan and put it in your tub, and then you would follow the directions, exactly what the directions say, which is going to be about 1 ounce to a gallon of water. And then you just let your dog sit in there and let him sit in there for about 15, 20 minutes. That is only if you can't do it this way. So the other way to do it, and the right way to do it, and the way that the directions will state, is that you are just let that dry. So you put it all over your dog and then you let it dry. But here's the thing. It can stain your furniture. It can stain your carpet. It can stain everything. But once it's dry, you're fine. It also can stain your dog. So you have to be really careful. If you have a white dog and you make it too thick, you're going to have a yellow dog that smells like rotten eggs. So yay, fun. But if you stick to the directions and maybe dilute it a little bit more if you have a white dog. If you have a different colored dog, I wouldn't worry so much about the staining. I'd worry more about trying to get your dog not to be itchy anymore. But you can either do it that way where you just let them soak in it for 15, 20 minutes and then wash it off so that they can go back to running around in your house. But then if you do it that way, you really need to do it every day. You really should probably wash it off, whatever you got to do, and then do it the next day. If you do it the other way, the way that the directions state, where you put it all over your dog's, wherever you think is the problem. Like if your dog is just having an itchy mess all over, but no hair loss, it's probably not mange or mites. It's probably more internal, and we'll talk about that. But if it is localized, like the feet, those kind of things, you would dip their feet and then let it sit on them and dry. So when it's wet, it can stain furniture and everything. When it's dry, it won't. And also once it's dry, they can even lick it. Not that you want them to, but they could once it's dry. So you would do that. And then 3 days later, you would do the dip again. And then 3 days later, you would do the dip again. I always tell people, if you haven't noticed any difference in 3 days, then this probably isn't your problem. And we got to look further and deeper into it. But that's the treatment that I would do for scabies, that I would do for mange, that I would do for duck mites, that I would do for any of those type of things. But there's so many other types of skin problems. And unfortunately, our vets just go straight to part of the problem. I think a lot of times is that the condition that your vet says your animal has is only based on what they have to treat it. So if they don't have something like a lime and sulfur to treat it, and they're not familiar and they don't know, maybe they don't even have ivermectin or even know how to use it. So then they're not going to say it's mange because they want to have the solution for you, which is, we could get Carrie on her. So like I could go on a rant right now about how it bothers me that veterinarians are the ones that sell the drug, and I'm probably gonna piss off a lot of veterinarians that I love, but I always worry that the wrong drug is getting recommended because it's the one they have on their shelf. And if they don't have enough tools in their toolbox, then they're not going to recommend the right drug if they don't have it. So that always bothers me. But if they didn't have lime and sulfur and they're not somebody that pays attention or lives in an area, they're not even going to think about it being mange or scabies or those kind of things. So you yeah. It smells like rotten eggs. I actually am starting to like the smell of it. That's what I told my staff the other day. Something might be wrong because I'm kind of starting to like the smell of it, but it is so strong. It's so strong that when I'm using it at work, my girls up in front always have to tell everybody, sorry, it smells like that. Carrie's doing one of her crazy therapy baths because I spend most of the time in therapy baths with dogs. I hate to see dogs suffer like that with the itching and scratching and constant stuff like that. Uh, so other things your dog could have that, like I told you earlier with the golden retriever, ichthyosis. Ichthyosis is basically means like fish scales. But one of the indications of whether your dog has ichthyosis is actually going to be the darkening of the skin. So normal skin on a dog should not be black. Like if you pull his hair up on his back, his skin should not be this dark patchy stuff, and that's hard to say unless I see it in front of me, but because you may find little areas on your dog where they're black, but in general the skin should be, pink all over. It shouldn't have this like thickness black part. But I would encourage you to look up ichthyosis, especially if you have a golden retriever that's been itchy. Look up ichthyosis, and it's a genetic condition. So the only way to find out if your dog has that would be for you to have a blood draw and check and see, because it's a genetic problem. So you want to make sure you look up that so that you're going after. But that will start off very early because they're born with that, and then it's the skin cells just constantly regenerating so fast. But if you look up ichthyosis, you're going to look at the darkness that I'm talking about, because there is a difference between the darkness in ichthyosis and the darkness from yeast that's growing, which of course we're going to talk about yeast infections because we have to. So Arlene, thank you. But remember that colloidal silver is an antibacterial. So you have to be really, really careful anytime we're using something that kills, because if we don't put something back on to help, obviously, if I'm having you use a lime and sulfur, it also will have the effect of killing, but it has the effect of killing everything. So we're going to talk a lot about replacement when we use stuff like colloidal silver shampoos. But sometimes what happens is people get in these habits, right? Well, it worked, so that's the one that works for my dog. So instead of them stopping the antibiotic, they just keep using it. And because they've used it for so long, now the dog has to have it, because if he doesn't, everything gets out of control, because the bacteria that's supposed to keep it in control was also killed off and it was never replaced. So we have to talk a lot about replacing bacteria once we use baths and shampoos and all of those kinds of things. Ask me again about, because now I lost track. Does that happen in a dog's ears? Ask me again. But if you're talking about the imbalance, yeah, it definitely can happen in their ears. Black thick patches, etc. I had an old girl that got that. Vet didn't know what it was. No itching. So it depends. So when a dog gets older, sometimes they will get these little black patches. Their skin kind of like we get age spots. So they can get basically age spots, but they're kind of bigger. But yeast overgrowth, when we have like chronic yeast overgrowth and it can cause inflammation, you can get what's called, basically it's like elephant skin, and that's long-term inflammation, long-term yeast problems going on in the body, and so the skin starts to turn this like black elephant type skin. So it's very different than the black little, like my dog right now who's going to be 13 pretty soon. He's got a couple little black, he's not around here. I would maybe try to show you what I'm talking about, but so anyway, those little black little spots can be age related and not be skin problem related. So you just kind of have to look up these things. That's what I was hoping, is to give you guys all of these different types of skin disorders so you can kind of look them up and match them to what possibly might be your dog's problem of his itching and his paw licking and those kind of things. But yeah, definitely look up, if you have a golden retriever, look up ichthyosis. But probably the most common itching problem that I see is going to be bacterial and yeast infections. Those are really common. Unfortunately, I don't think they should ever occur. I think that if we, from day one, have protected our dogs' skin microbiome, then we wouldn't be having these issues at all. It's really disheartening to me when I see young puppies coming in and their vets have already sold them their medicated shampoos and start them off just, they think it's kind of, to me, it's kind of like just having a baby and saying, oh, let's just keep him on chemotherapy so he never gets cancer, and let's just keep him on an antibiotic so he never gets sick from bacteria and stuff. That's what's happening to our puppies. Not so much the chemotherapy, but our puppies are being set up for total failure right from the get-go. And some dogs are set up for total failure before the vet really even had anything to do with it. And that is, certain breeds are born through C-section and not through the birthing canal. And all of those bacterias are supposed to be set for them in the birthing canal. So if you had a healthy mom and she had a really good gut microbiome and she gave birth naturally, then she would pass a lot of those bacterias onto the skin, into the guts, everything of the puppies. But we do so many C-sections. So we see one of the breeds of dogs that have the worst yeast infections I've ever seen is on the bulldog, the English bulldog. And it also happens to be the one breed that gets the most C-sections. In fact, most bulldogs end up getting a C-section, and they end up having some of the absolute, almost impossible to get in control of yeast infections. And it's awful. I have actually seen dogs get put to sleep for yeast infections. And how awful is that? Because the time that it takes and the misinformation and the commitment that it takes to get rid of yeast in a body that is out of control like that, is daunting, and it's awful to watch. I don't want to say that pet parents are not caring about their animals when they put them to sleep. It's on the contrary. It's usually they can't stand watching the dog suffer anymore. And they've tried. I mean, I had a woman years ago bring me a English bulldog, and the stack of vets that she had seen. I mean, it went years. This dog had been suffering with yeast infections. And the sad part is that I should have just taken the dog, because I know I'm a huge bulldog lover, as you guys know. I should have taken him, because I think I could have helped him, and I think she could have, but she was so in over her head. Like, she was really trying to learn and understand, and she kept making mistakes, and she was trying. And ultimately one day she called me and she said she couldn't stand it anymore, and she had her little dog put to sleep. It was awful. But also I know he had suffered for years. So I was letting me use the Dremel on her nails. Yay. And lick the tool after doing one nail. I'm doing just one nail at a time. I'm so happy, Lily. That makes me happy. In the perfect world, every dog would get Dremeled. I get beat up for that a lot. If you guys haven't heard my speech on Dremeling nails, I don't really talk about it much anymore because I've been beat up pretty bad. And usually it's because I write it in a text and people don't really understand that I'm talking about a whole industry. I'm not talking about your personal dog at home that you do, although I think it's great if you can, like Lily's getting her dog trained for it. I think that pay close attention to, it brings up a good point. Pay close attention to when your dogs are licking at their feet, right? Are they self-grooming? Because sometimes they're just self-grooming and their nails are too long and they want their nails shorter. So they self-groom. And then pay close attention to, are they licking at their paws right after they went to the groomer and got their nails done? Because cutting nails is, in my opinion, can be very, very, very painful. It's not just my opinion. I've had so many dogs that I've taken. Now you got me on my soapbox there. I've had too many dogs have to get sedated to get their nails done. So I'm a big fan. I wish the whole industry would change the way they do things and start learning how to use Dremels properly and use those, because you never know which dog is going to end up with in pain. So it's awful. So I've been letting her get used to the noise of the Dremel, and it's working. Real quick on the Dremel, have you used a diamond? Are you using a diamond head or regular? The only reason I bring that up is because the diamond Dremel actually doesn't get hot like it can. So you still want to be careful when you're putting a Dremel on your dog's nails. You don't want to like push it down for long periods of time, but the diamond doesn't get hot like the paper one does. So try and look up a diamond head for your Dremel. You can just buy the diamond. It's made out of diamonds. And so, well, I'm sure it's not super famous or it means super expensive diamonds, but it is diamond and they last longer too. So for a single use person with one dog or even probably 3 or 5 dogs, it probably the Dremel part of it, the head would probably last you forever. They last a very long time. And I mean, I have lots of them at work, but I have one in one room and I've probably had that one over a year and I probably Dremel 20 dogs nails a day. So get the diamond head if you're using a Dremel because it doesn't get as hot and see how that works for you. So okay, so back to skin. So we went over ichthyosis, mange, scabies, all kind of in there. Self-mutilating, the difference between my dog's licking a little bit and my dog's self-mutilating. If your dog's just licking a little bit, remember, before anybody, like, take videos of it. You'll see on Saving Pets, if you guys are watching this through Saving Pets, you'll see I am constantly asking for videos and pictures and take a picture. Let me see a picture. Let me see a video. Because it's really hard when someone just says, oh my gosh, my dog's licking his paws. I want to know the difference between self-mutilating and paw licking, because paw licking can be anxiety. It can be all of the things that I mentioned earlier. If your dog is walking on a lead that is pulling and he's a puller, sometimes the nerve down in their arm can hurt. So we really want to know exactly what we're talking about so that we know how to treat it and what to do with it. So the skin microbiome. So hopefully you guys are going to stop using medicated shampoos. So let's start there. Let's start with stopping our medicated shampoos. Let's start with not overbathing our dogs, being very, very careful not to overbathe. Let's also talk about, if your dogs are going to groomers, how important it is for you to ask your groomer what system they're using to groom your dogs. So I'm going to give you an example of this. So a couple things can happen. Bacteria can transfer, right? So if I am using, like a lot of groomers do now, they use, I use one, it's called a HydroSurge, and it's a pump that sucks up and can really get your dog clean. Like, I love the HydroSurge. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of different brands used. So, but if they're using one of these pumps, which is great, I wouldn't I wouldn't say I wouldn't go to a groomer that doesn't use one. But if you have a big hairy dog and you're wondering why your dog is never clean when he gets home from the groomer, it's probably because she's hand bathing and she couldn't possibly get him clean enough. But how is she cleaning that out? So they want to be using stuff that's cleaning. They want to make sure that's cleaning it out. But also importantly is the shampoos that they're using. So sometimes groomers, bacteria can grow inside their shampoos. And so you want to make sure your groomer is well aware of that, and you as well. So if you have shampoos at home and you're, leaving the cap open and water gets in that shampoo, that can maybe start to grow some bacteria. So you could be actually putting bad bacteria back onto your dog. So you want to be really careful about, dipping your hands into shampoos and cross-contaminating anything. So be really careful about that. Same thing when you're cleaning your dog's ears. So I see this a lot, or hear it a lot. I don't see it a lot because my staff is trained very well, but I have seen it where somebody will use like a cotton round and then they'll wipe out this ear and then they'll wipe out that ear. Don't do that. So you want to make sure you're not cross-contaminating anything when you're cleaning your dog's skin and ears. Make sure everything is bueno with your groomer. Most groomers know, they're being taught, hopefully, to not cross-contaminate shampoos and those kind of things to make sure. Okay, so now we know we're not going to overbathe our dogs. We're not going to cross-contaminate anything. We're not going to use medicated shampoos. The only time I would recommend using a medicated shampoo is if your dog has a serious bacterial infection, like a staph infection. But those are still temporary. Don't get in. It's kind of like the chicken and rice, right? It's kind of like the chicken and rice story. Dog had a little diarrhea, went to the vet. The vet told me to give him chicken and rice, which, by the way, don't. But the veterinarian told you to give him chicken and rice. And then you thought, oh, look at how great my dog's stool is. And he looks so happy. And that's great. And his stool looks great. And then before you know it, you're giving your dog chicken and rice as his only diet. That's what he's eating, is chicken and rice. And I see that time and time and time and time again, because people assume that just because the stool is good, that means their dog is healthy, when everything else is going down. Everything else is falling apart. The ears are inflamed, the skin is inflamed, dog's scratching all the time, but his stool looks good, so I'm going to keep doing the chicken and rice. Well, the same thing happens with the medicated shampoos. Your dog has a staph infection, they give you something like a chlorhexidine shampoo. You use the chlorhexidine shampoo, it clears up, and before you know it, you're using chlorhexidine shampoo on your dog forever and ever and ever. Don't do that. But in the event that your dog ends up with a serious bacterial infection, that is the only time that I would say let's use a antibacterial shampoo. But be very careful how often you use it, and also remember that when your dog has a bacterial infection, a lot of times you can see on your dog's skin these little. A lot of times people will think it's ringworm. I could tell you how many times people are like, oh my God, I think my dog has ringworm. Even my staff, when I bring new staff in and they see one of these little patches, they're like, I think this dog has ringworm. Is it contagious? And they get all freaked out. But a lot of times those bacterial infections will look like these little round patches, and it's kind of like not like a hot spot, if you know what a hot spot is, but you would only want to use that antibacterial shampoo on the spots. Don't use antibacterial shampoo on the whole body, because guess what? Then now you're disrupting the whole body, and then you wonder why all of a sudden now it's growing and the dog's getting worse and it's worse and it's worse. So only use if that's the case, if you can do it. If you can see the spots and you know where it is, I wouldn't drench it all over your dog's body. I would put it on the spots and kind of outwardly, so not just on the spot, but a little bit around it, and then that's it, and then let it sit. That's the other problem people make with antibacterial shampoos, is they don't do it long enough. Leave it on long enough. I don't mean long enough as in days, I mean long enough as in, leave it on for 15-20 minutes. If it's something as bad as staph, I actually will have dogs sit in it for 30 minutes. So even 45 minutes, where I'll just get it full strength and I'll just kind of put it in that area, and then we'll leave it on there. Ground turkey and butternut squash is better for diarrhea. I know I'm probably the only lone one here. That is fine for diarrhea, but I prefer ground turkey and banana. I just love banana. But if your dog won't eat banana or butternut squash, try one or the other. But you're right, Lily. Yeah, ground turkey, butternut squash is a good idea. We use New Year shampoo and love it. Do you have any other favorites we could rotate with? I absolutely love New Year. Which is going to lead me into what I want to talk about here a little bit, which is once we've killed, right? So we all know that once we've killed the bacteria in the gut, what do we do? Once we've given those antibiotics, what do? We give probiotics, right? And anybody that's kind of newer coming into this, hi, welcome. We're going to teach you a lot. All of us are. So how exciting is that going to be? But for you who know, we replace it with a probiotic. We're going to do the same thing to your dog's skin. We're going to replace with a probiotic. The problem is that there's so many probiotic shampoos, just like there are so many probiotics on the market. There's a ton of probiotic shampoos now. Probiotic this, probiotic that, probiotic everywhere. But do they work? And what are the inactive ingredients? Oh, good. I'm so glad. And I'm hopeful. I'm glad that you love it. So I wish there was more really good shampoos like this, but there aren't. And the problem is that people are putting these probiotics in there. It's kind of like even in dog food, I see it. I see it a lot of times in kibble, where they're like, oh, it has these live cultures. Well, it was live when you put it in there, but then you cooked it at such a high heat, it died. The same thing happens with the probiotic shampoos. So you want to be really, really careful when you're looking at shampoos that you don't fall into that trap where it says it on the front, probiotic shampoo. And so you're like, okay, that's what that crazy lady Carrie said, that I needed a probiotic shampoo. And before you know it, you're using a probiotic shampoo that really is nothing. It's got alcohol in it. It's got all sorts of sulfates in it and all sorts of, things in it to make it perfumey and dyes and all of this kind of stuff. And then you drench your dog all over that, and it's absolutely having no effect whatsoever. So Nui Gear is one of the shampoos that I do recommend, because it does have some enzymes in it and some bacterias, and it doesn't have any of that other junk in it to kill anything. The downside to Nui Gear, as those of you who have used it will know, it doesn't lather up like a big perfumey dye shampoo. So if your dog went into motor oil, it isn't going to help you. It's not going to do it. But it is such a fabulous shampoo to protect the skin's microbiome. So I would highly recommend that you try the Nui Gear shampoo. They also have what they call a lotion. We'll talk about food. Food is a big one for the skin. And just to throw it out there, zinc is my number one for your dog's skin. And we'll talk about that in a minute, because I don't want you to run out and buy zinc tablets. I don't want you to do that. So we'll talk about it, but I want to throw it out there. But Nui Gear makes both the shampoo and they make what they call a lotion, but it isn't lotiony at all. It is very clear, and it's just more enzymes and bacteria that you can spray on your dog, which I always recommend using the Nui Gear shampoo to wash your dog. And then after, make up a spray with this lotion and then spray it on your dog and let your dog dry that way. And then that way you're going to be sealing in these bacteria to protect the skin's microbiome. The other way you can do it, somebody had asked me if there was any other shampoos. I am actually desperately working on trying to get my own made, because there's some things I would like to do to it. I actually contacted the company that makes Nui Gear, and hopefully someday I'll be able to come up with another shampoo that will work. The problem is I'm looking for a chemist. So if there's any, I want to make sure that the stuff that I want to add to the shampoo doesn't kill the bacteria. So I need a little bit of a chemist to help me, microbiologist, somebody that can kind of help me get in there and do that. But so the other things you guys can do, I actually have this one here. This company makes me a little upset, but this will tell you how much I care about your dogs. Even though I'm a little bummed that this company won't let me sell their product in my store, doesn't mean I won't recommend it, because it does work and I do like it. So this is a company called Ion. It is a soil-based bacteria. And much like you use the Nui Gear lotion, you can use this. You can get this online as well. It's called Ion. I use it on my skin. It's amazing. So if you guys this is just my little plug for you guys. If you're having any kind of acne problems or skin issues at all, this is amazing. So, and it's soil based. So I love that. You can get it. Oh, good. Somebody else made it on. I'm so glad you guys made it on. So you could use Ion if you wanted to spray that on your dog instead of the Nui Gear lotion, to get different bacterias. So keep in mind, just like the gut bacteria, it's really hard for us to know what's missing. What don't we have? There are different bacterias that live in your dog's ears, that live on your dog's nose, that live on their tail, on the bottoms of their paws. Like, the bacteria is very specific as to where it lives and what it does. So sometimes you can be doing the Nui Gear shampoo and you're doing the Nui Gear lotion and you're trying and it's not quite working. Well, maybe it's not the right bacteria. So that would be when you want to start looking into what else is out there, what other kind of, and you want to make sure that you guys are really looking at your inactive ingredients. What are the inactive ingredients? Sometimes are more important than the active ingredients. So the inactive ingredients are super important. Another thing that I really like is another way for you to get bacteria back onto your dog's skin. There is a company called Teef. You may have heard me talk about it, Teef. This is one of my favorite ones to do it because it's a twofer. It can do two things for us, which are super important, because most of our dogs will be doing self-grooming. Even if they're not licking and chewing because they're in pain or whatever, they might be self-grooming. My dog self-grooms when he gets too long. He hates it, which currently he is too long and wants me to groom him, but I've been busy. But I did take him swimming the other day. He's loves it. So anyway, so you could use Teef. Like I said, it's a twofer, which is funny. Get it? Twofer, Teef. Okay, I'm sorry. So what I mean by a twofer is that it's designed to be sprayed in their mouth, and it is just bacterias, and it's prebiotic, it's postbiotic, and it's got a lot of bacteria in it so that it can go into the mouth. So pre-post biotic. prebiotic, postbiotic, and probiotic. I'm like, what was the other one? It's a probiotic, it's a prebiotic, and it's a postbiotic. So you spray it into their mouth, and you can also spray it onto their skin. And what's so great about it is that if you're doing everything to protect your dog's skin microbiome and he's transferring bad bacteria onto his skin, you're just fighting against it. So you can spray it into the mouth. They actually, teeth, they want you to put it in water, but you could put it into a sprayer and spray it all over your dog's body. Anywhere they're itching, you can spray it onto them. And all it is some really good bacteria that you can use. So I highly recommend those. So far, that's all I've been able to find that doesn't mean that there aren't some really great stuff out there. There might be, but I test everything. I test everything. I'm actually testing another product right now. So I'll let you guys know and keep you up to date. But my clients have been so great to let me test on their dogs, different things. So I have a dog right now that I'm testing something on that I'm excited about. Any ideas, suggestions for hornworts that look like claws on my dog's tail? Chloe was been CKD by vets and it's fine since he was 12. Okay, sorry. Colloidal silver, it has been checked by vets and is fine. And since he is 12, they say leave it. Doesn't bother him more, me, because I worry about it. Lisa, microbubbles. So microbubbles is amazing. Colloidal silver always kind of worries me a little. I like colloidal silver. Don't get me wrong. But colloidal silver is antibacterial. And just because it's holistic doesn't mean that it doesn't have I mean, if it's killing, it's killing. So you could do some colloidal silver, but microbubbles. I love microbubbles. So what microbubbles does, and find groomers. So if you guys want to write this down for those of you who aren't, near me, or there's probably only, I think there's only about 300 groomers in the United States that have these. I might even be going a little high, but if you go to TheraClean, THERA, I know Lori's going to put it up for us, but if you go to TheraClean and you put in, your zip code, you can find a groomer that has it. But what microbubbles is amazing. I've seen microbubbles. I just did one the other day on a little Pomeranian, and we were giving him a microbubbles bath just because he's itchy, and we're trying to clear out all the allergens from his hair follicles. But he had a little tiny sebaceous cyst, just a teeny tiny little sebaceous cyst on him. And when I was putting the microbubbles over him, what microbubbles does is, so your dog's hair, they have like one hair, and then down at the bottom of the follicle, they have a couple other little tiny hairs that come out. And down inside here, a lot of times debris can get in there, allergens can get in there. Well, what the microbubble does is it's billions and billions of little microscopic bubbles, and they go down into the follicle. And because it's loaded with the oxygen, when it pulls up, it brings with all of the debris with it. So it's pretty amazing. I've shown a couple videos online of that so that people could kind of see all of the debris that comes out from the dogs. It's disgusting, but I love it. I love watching how much stuff comes off of them that I couldn't get off with shampoo, and shampoo's replacing stuff. So it's pretty amazing. And when I do my microbubbles, I actually use it with the Nui gear. And so I'm putting all that bacteria through the follicle and pulling it up. They are looking at trying to put together more smaller ones, so maybe they'll be more accessible to groomers. It's a very, very, very expensive machine. I think I paid $10,000 for it, and it's been such a lifesaver for so many dogs. So it's a blessing to have. But definitely try microbubbles would be my first thing to do. But yeah, I know those things are kind of, but try microbubbles if you can find it. And see, I would also, if I were you, anytime your dog starts having lumps or bumps or growths on them, I would try doing a liver detox. And one of my favorite liver detoxes is from Adored Beast. And I would try doing their liver detox because a lot of times stuff is happening in there. I just did a dog today that had so many lipomas. I know they're not the same as what you're talking about, but the lipomas, and sometimes it's just the liver looking to place stuff somewhere, like get out, I can't take it anymore, and I got to put it somewhere, so it ends up in the skin cells and the fat cells and stuff. So I would try absolutely doing a microbubbles bath, Lisa, or both, the liver detox, and see what happens there. One of the problems with doing stuff like liver detoxes and even microbubbles is being more patient and persistent. So if you're going to do like a liver detox and you only do it once every week because you keep forgetting, it's not going to work. You have to be very consistent. And same thing with the microbubbles. So when we do microbubbles, it's best if you find somebody or that you do a 3-2-1. It means that you do it 3 days one week, 2 days the next week, and then 1 day the week after that. Every once in a while, in really bad cases, you have to continue to do it. But it does get very, very deep down in there. So I don't recommend doing it past 2 treatments. I don't know about your other groomers, what they would recommend, but past 2 treatments, you could take a big long break, but I don't want to get too deep down in there again and disrupt the microbiome. So, but those would be the suggestions I would make for something like that. I just want to make sure that I'm not missing some of these questions. Foods. Okay, we were going to talk about food. I knew I had to go back through here so I could do it. Of course, we're going to talk about food. I can't not talk about food. Food is by far the best medicine that you can do. The trick with food is knowing what food your dog needs, right? What food does my dog need and how often does he need it and what is he lacking and what isn't he lacking? And a lot of times we get people who say, well, wild animals wouldn't eat that, but just because they wouldn't eat it doesn't mean that they can't get the benefits from it. And because our animals aren't eating fresh whole prey, meaning at the moment an animal hunts and kills, from that moment on, everything is changing, right? So it's losing its nutritional value from the moment it dies. So even though we do our best and we get the freshest that we can get, it's still not all there. So there can be some nutritional deficiencies even in the best of diets. So in those cases, I want to make sure that we're doing a lot of rotation. But zinc, I had mentioned, I think zinc is one of the absolute most important skin and immune system protectors of your dog. But of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't. I mean, we can't just live off zinc, right? We have to have a really great. So vitamin C and zinc, I think, are really important for your dog's health. But I don't like supplements. I know I'm probably going to upset some people too, but I just don't like supplements. They scare me, truthfully. If I take too much iron and I get constipated, then I'm going to be like, oh, I took some iron and now I'm constipated and I'm not feeling very good. And I can put it together. But because there's another variable in there, the fact that your dog cannot tell me how he feels, I really don't like supplements. That being said, sometimes supplements have to be given because the dog won't eat the food of what we need them to eat. So what's high in zinc? Obviously, beef liver is probably one of beef heart. Those are really high in zinc. So I like that animals have that in their diet. So that's why whole fresh foods are so important, is making sure, because you don't want to go out and just start giving your dog zinc supplements. But if they're eating stuff that is depleting their body of zinc, i.e. rice is a binder. So it grabs hold of the zinc in the body. So you could be on this hand, you could be feeding tons of beef liver and you're like, that crazy lady, my dog's still zinc deficiencies, by the way, are, very prominent around the eyes. So if your dog, and certain breeds are more prone to zinc deficiencies. Well, they can all have zinc deficiencies, but for whatever reason, we see it a lot in the husky. And so if you guys want to Google and look up husky zinc deficiency, then you'll know exactly what I'm talking about with the eye issue. But I've seen it in cockers. I've probably seen it in every breed over the years. Maybe didn't know what it is, but they start to lose hair around their eye when they have a zinc deficiency. And then if you give the zinc, like if you give beef liver or any of those things, but you're also giving rice, then the rice is going to bind to the zinc and just pull it straight out of the body. And so then you'll end up with nothing. Get trapped in the liver. Try going to look into this. I honestly, a lot of times when I get people to just go simple and back off a little bit, because I think one of the problems I have with holistic medicine is that, and we kind of, I look at, okay, a lot of times people come into me with boarding and they have piles and piles and piles of supplements. If you're feeding a right amount of food and you're doing a really good rotation and you're not supplementing and you're doing whole foods and you're rotating and balancing over time. Variation is the word I wanted to say. You got a lot of variation, a lot of different colors, and all of those things. There's a good chance your dog doesn't need anything but that. The only time that like I said, I recommend doing a supplement would be like, say, in the case of a dog with arthritis. Okay, I got a dog, he's got a lot of inflammation, he's got a lot of arthritis going on. Once I remove anything that's inflammatory, right? So I don't want to just start giving him glucosamine and chondroitin when I'm feeding him an inflammatory food. So what do I got to do? I got to get rid of all the inflammatory stuff, and then I got to give him the stuff that would help. But let's say I want to give him glucosamine and chondroitin and he won't eat the mussels that I want to give him. Then if he's not going to eat the mussels and I really want to help him, I start looking at all of the stuff. Where does glucosamine and chondroitin come from? Because that's one of the biggest things we can do to help with the joints and the muscles and that kind of thing. But I can't get him to eat it. Then I will start to look towards supplements. But otherwise, I'm going to look for a whole food supplement 100%. And by the way, if you haven't heard me talk about the skin of a hard-boiled egg that goes around the egg or the inside of the eggshell, if you peel that off the eggshell, roll it up in a little ball. I pop one probably 3 times a week. I'll make a hard-boiled egg, and then Lori always laughs at me because I get so excited when I get the full peel. It gets so excited because I'll crack, you crack your little egg, and then I'm trying to peel it, and I don't want it to break because I want the whole piece. And when I get the whole piece, I get really excited, roll it up in a ball, and I'll pop it in my mouth. And then my dogs also will get some. So I'm constantly going, and it sucks that eggs got so expensive because they used to be my go-to for people, making sure they get them. So another protein, if sensitive to beef, I really like goat. If you can get a hold of goat is, I think, rabbit is also a good one for sensitive, I think. But every dog's different. It's really hard to just go, this is the greatest one ever. But goat, alligator is another good one. Kangaroo, but it's just, they're hard to find. But those are really good, sensitive, to find out. A really good, a lot of people don't want to do this, but a really good way to find out if your dog actually is sensitive to a protein, even though we think they are, and maybe we've even run those tests and we think they are. But a really good way to do that is to do a goat milk fast. And it's not really a fast because goat's milk is a complete diet. But if you can't find goat meat by itself, just take some goat's milk. If you can do it, it's hard. Let your dogs have the goat's milk for 3 days, and then introduce something like a beef or a single protein, nothing else in it, nothing else. It just has to be just ground up beef, or ground up whatever it is. And then just give them that. But goat's milk, doing a goat's milk fast is pretty amazing. I got to think of another. It's not a goat's milk diet. We'll call it that. It's not a fast, but it feels like a fast because we're not actually putting food in the bowl. But then you can kind of try to find out if your dog has some sensitivities to everything that you're feeding, and you can do that. Most people don't want to do that because it's really hard to do. You don't want to do that if you have a puppy. You don't want to do that. Remember what we always say on Saving Pets. If you're watching on Saving Pets, we always say, feed the dog in front of you. So anything that I say here, just make sure that you take into account your dog's age, your dog's medical conditions. I'm not a veterinarian. I don't know what else to throw out there for you, but hey, I have a couple people. So Organic Paws, she's a dog groomer also. So she's on. So I was saying hi to her. So I love talking to other groomers and having their take on things. But I just will throw this out for you. You know what? Why don't we do a little contest? I love contests. Let's do a little contest. So anybody that gets this answer right, or I should say the first person that gets this answer right, I will send you a free bottle of Nui Gear. How's that? So I will send you a free bottle of Nui Gear if you can get this answer correct. What is the longest time a dog has ever fasted? And then Lori can start the, I didn't know that. The Organic Paw, the one I told you, she's a groomer. She said she used to be a vet tech. I don't know why I didn't know that. Me too. Wow, we have a lot in common. We should go to dinner. So if anybody can get that answer right, the longest time a dog has ever fasted, if somebody gets that correct, and I mean total fast, I mean no food, no goat's milk, nothing but water. If you can get that correct, I will send you a free Nui Gear shampoo. You'll just have to give us your address behind the scenes later. You have to call the spa or something, and I can give you the address. So, and now I have to look up because you guys are putting it in months, and I only know it by days. So I have to look it up. In I have to look it up in. I'm going to text it to Lori. Lori, I'm going to text you, and then tell me how many. Well, I guess I can do it. I have to figure out in months because I literally only know it in days. So put it down in days, guys. Let me get a calculator out real quick. Okay. Hang on. I'm sorry. I have us on like, okay. I think somebody already got it right. Let me look. I thought I saw somebody might have gotten it right. Oh my God, Janelle. I got it, Lori. Janelle got it correct. Unless my math is wrong. Janelle, don't get too excited. So I'll tell you guys the story. So the longest fasting dog was done out of Cambridge University, and it was 152 days, which I think is 5 months, right? So 152 days, they fasted a collie. And what they wanted to do is find out how long a dog could go without any food, and when at what point their nitrate levels. You guys can read about it. It was Cambridge University, and they did this study 2 months in a row. I mean, 2 years in a row. The same dog, because they wanted to make sure that the variables weren't too different. So, but yeah, no, 152 days, but it was full fast. It was a full fast, and I think somebody got it right. Where was it? Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Janelle got it right. So it was 5 months, right? 152 days. Anyway, very good. So I'll look at that. Yes. 152 days, 4.99. Yeah. So thank you. I was trying to do it and the same time my cat's over here and whatever. So that's awesome. So yeah, 152 days. And what was really interesting about that is that I'm way off. I always use that because when I tell people, hey, let's just give them some goat's milk for a couple of days, people, we all panic, right? I'm putting like, oh my God, my poor dogs, my poor dog, my poor dog, my poor dog. But what was really interesting about that from Cambridge University is that dog, they said right around the 50-day mark, he went into ketosis and his energy levels just skyrocketed. He got super happy and excited, and he was kind of running all over the school because it was done at the university. So it's really interesting. And then they started to recognize his nitrates were raising at about 151 days, I think it was. And so they stopped the fast at 152. Then they brought him back, the same poor dog, next year, and they got the exact same results. So it's really interesting. Yeah. Billy Hookman mentioned it long ago. Oh, he did? I know that the goat's milk was 5 months. So that was pretty interesting that the goat's milk, they went a really long time. I, for some reason, thought he said 5 years on goat's milk, not 5 months. But now I'm going to have to ask him because I was sure he said 5 years on the goat's milk. But I'm talking about a complete fast. But remember, you never want to fast a dog under the age of a year. You never want to fast a dog with diabetes. You never want to fast a dog who is, struggling with any kind of health issues. I just had a woman that we were trying to switch her dog over to eating just once a day instead of eating 3 times a day. But I didn't know this when I mentioned it to her. So make sure when you're talking to people, you give us all the information. But her dog had aspirated before. When he vomits, he aspirated and ended up in the hospital. So he has a history of doing that. So because when we were trying to switch him over to get him to stop doing that, as I'm a believer that dogs do that because their stomach acids are anticipating food, not because they don't have food. It's because the stomach thinks there's food coming because we got them on those timers. Nowhere in the wild does an animal eat on time. Nowhere in the wild do the giraffes go, well, can't have those leaves until 5 o'clock. We are the only any creatures on the world that are on time clocks. And so we're constantly giving our dogs these times to eat. And then when they don't eat, the stomach acids start producing way before because it's anticipating it has to. And so then they end up throwing up because they're not eating on time. Our daylight savings. Yeah, and so sometimes dogs can throw up. But anyway, we had to regroup with her dog once. She told me that her dog had that problem with aspirating because that's far more important than me getting her dog on a once a day feeding. Though I do like only feeding your dogs once every, which gives you a 12-hour fast, which I really like. So anyway, so let's see. My rescue girl fasted on feces and urine for 2 months before they found the dogs. Oh my gosh, what? Oh, that's awful. Anyway. All right, guys. Well, I think we have to give it to, so let me make sure because I know it's coming up on 6:30 and I have to go because I'm actually going to an organic meeting that I have to go to. So Janelle, was Janelle the first one that got 5 months? Yes. So Janelle, can you please, if you don't know, or if you follow me on Facebook or something, send me a private message with your address and I'm going to send you a free bottle of Nui Gear shampoo. So how exciting was that? Maybe we should start doing that always. I'll give you guys little tests on things, and then we'll do stuff like this, and I can send you guys free stuff. So I love doing that. Anything that will help dogs. And you should know too, I really, really always support small businesses, small companies, because I like that they have more control. A lot of the dog foods that I recommend I think all of the dog foods that I recommend make their own food. They're not being done in manufacturing plants and those kind of things, because I think that's where we lose control. I never recommend dog foods that have a bunch of synthetic vitamins and minerals in it, unless the only time I do is when I have dogs that can't they're having trouble digesting bone, or they're having trouble digesting eggshells. I do recommend one dog food called Open Farm. Not necessarily, not their kibble, but I do recommend their lightly cooked food because they use a calcium in there. So, but anyway, I hope, guys, since it's 6:30, we've been on here an hour and a half, that this has been helpful for you about the skin's microbiome. I love talking about the skin. I spend most of my days today. If I told you guys, maybe that'll be the next. How many dogs did Carrie bathe today? How many dogs do you guys think I bathe in a day? I should see if you guys have that answer. In fact, I'll leave it with you. We'll give 2 people prizes today. How many dogs do you think Carrie bathes in a day? Or even today? We can just go off today. I know how many I bathed today because I was counting. Look at me giving you guys 2 prizes. I say I'm going to go, and then I'm like, I'm not going to go. I don't want to go. I love talking about this stuff. 12. Let's see. Oh my God, you guys all threw it out there. Let's see if anybody got it. Watch out, sweetie. Let's see. Should I add that Carrie's 53 years old? No, because I think somebody got it. I saw it. Where was it? Hang on. I'm looking for it. Oh my God, Bev, you are exactly right. I bathed 25 dogs this morning before 3 o'clock. I started at 7 and it was done so that I could get over here at 3 o'clock. So both Bev and it was Janelle. Can you just give us a little heads up, and I will send you each a bottle of that shampoo. So thank you guys so much for being here. Need some nutrition advice for my dog. His gut is crazy. He's been on animal biome protocol for a few months. So frustrating. I will contact you soon. Yeah, Lori, it would probably be better. I will be on here every Wednesday night. We'll be doing it both through pretty soon. We're going to be bringing on, if you're going on Saving Pets, if you're not following Saving Pets, I would highly recommend it. If you are saving on Saving Pets, I think that's great. If you're following us through the Spaw, that's awesome too. But I do come on every Wednesday night. Through Saving Pets, though, very quick here, we are going to be bringing on all of the vets so that you guys can meet who's been behind the stage, answering some of your questions. You're going to get to meet all of the vets that we have. Most people don't even realize how many vets are involved in Saving Pets. I'm glad you like it, Lily. Yeah, we're going to be doing, it's 5 o'clock Pacific Standard Time every Wednesday night. Pretty soon, we're going to have Kelly back on. We're going to be bringing on some of the admins that are going to be back on. So you guys can look at, who's been moderating, who's answering these questions, who are these people, what do they know, why do they know it, who's helping me. We're going to be doing a lot more videos here and just trying to get just more and more information out to you. Sometimes it's really hard for us to answer questions in text. It gets all messed up. And so I'm hoping this will help. And Kelly just wants so much for Saving Pets, and I want so much for us to be able to do that for you guys. So I will will see you guys all next week. Congratulations to the 2 people that got the free shampoo. We will be shipping that out to you this week, so long as we get your addresses from you as soon as possible. Okay. All right, everybody. Have a good night. I forgot I got to get to this meeting. So good night, everybody. Bye. Lori, thank you so much. I always forget. Make sure you guys thank Lori because she is so on top of it, making sure you guys have all of this information. So, and I'll see you next week. Also, real quick, if you have a topic that you want to talk about, send me a little message and I'll talk about it. I'll talk about anything dog related. I love it. So, give me a chance. Yes. Oh, also, Lori had posted about the Saving Pets Expo, the Thriving Pet. It's called the Thriving Pet Expo. That's going to be coming up in end of September. So that's a good place for you guys to meet all of the veterinarians, everybody. So TEEF is the name of that. And I will see you guys. Good night, everybody. Bye. Thank